Okay, this is a module 4 skills test. It's very similar to the monkey hunter, except for you have no object that you're shooting at, but it's still projectile motion, and you can still change the same things. You can change the launch speed, you can change the launch angle, and you can also change the launch height. You can actually put your object up at on a little platform if you want. You also have some other options as far as tracing the path. You can actually trace the path that your object follows as it moves through in its projectile motion. Most importantly, you can leave the trace path on there if you want. It is very suggested that you include these vectors. Make sure you have your velocity vectors checked on. So that's these red arrows, and these red arrows are essentially the components of your velocity. So our velocity is right now I've got it set to go 36 meters per second at 83 degrees. So my object is going to shoot. In fact, I can go ahead and show it to you. It shoots almost straight up the way I had it set up, and so going back, notice that you can kind of tell that by my velocity vectors. I have a large vertical velocity and not much of a horizontal velocity. One thing I should mention is that upward motion is considered positive. Motion to the right is also considered positive. Motion downward is negative for our purposes here. Motion to the left is considered negative. So now check out the acceleration vector. This blue vector is the acceleration essentially produced by the weight of the ball. The Earth is pulling on this ball with a force that we call weight, and that causes acceleration in a downward direction. You want to keep an eye on these vectors as the ball moves to answer some of the questions in the early part of this activity. Now, when you get down to question 5, it wants you to set, I'm going to reset things and bring it maybe back down to ground level if I can. So, and what it wants you to do is it specifies a certain speed you want to launch with, 30 meters per second, and it wants you to create a table that's going to change your launch angle methodically. And so you set it for 10 degrees, you hit start, you launch the thing, and you see how far it travels, what its horizontal displacement is, and you enter that value. Okay, and do that same sort of thing for question 7 as well. It wants you to now compare your values from that question 5 and figure out which angles produce the same horizontal displacement. So at launch from 10 degrees, my object went 31.42 meters. What other launch angle could produce that same displacement? And then finally, in question 9, you have to take a look at some velocity versus time graphs and figure out which one best represents the motion of your projectile. And then finally, the last question has to do with time. So here, it's useful for you to go ahead and hit reset here. Again, it doesn't really matter your speed or your launch angle. What is important is once you fire the object, you're going to pause. Once you pause, you can step through in increments of tenths of a second, and you're going to try to figure out the amount of time that it takes for the object to climb compared to the amount of time that it takes for it to fall back to the ground. So that pretty much covers it. Good luck shooting.